friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be delving into the life of Remus Lupin. He is one of my favourite characters. He has a really kind of tragic backstory, and yeah, I thought it would be a good idea today to delve into his past and find out a little bit more about our favourite Defence Against the Dark Arts teacher. Don't forget guys, if you are new and you haven't done already, then please hit the subscribe button to become part of my little magical community, and turn those notification bells on as well to be notified every time I upload a video. And you can always go and check me out on my social media. A big shout out as well to my patrons. You guys are amazing. If you are interested in joining us on Patreon, the link is in the description down below. You can go and check it out. So Remus John Lupin was born on the 10th of March in 1960 to Lyle and Hope Lupin. His father was a wizard working at the Ministry of Magic, and his mother was a muggle. One day at work, Lyle encountered the werewolf Fenrir Greyback, who was on trial for killing 2 children. Lyle was the only one at court that recognised that Greyback was actually a werewolf. Greyback was pretending to be a muggle tramp. Lyle was outraged when Greyback was released. He voiced the opinion that Greyback deserved nothing but death. But this outburst would end up costing the Lupin family in a huge way. To get his revenge, Greyback decided to target Lyle's son. As the nearly 5-year-old Remus Lupin slept peacefully in his bed, Greyback forced his way into their home through a window. Lyle was able to get there in time to drive Greyback off with a powerful spell, but sadly he was unable to prevent him from completing his goal. Remus became infected with lycanthropy and became a werewolf. His parents took him to various healers and they tried their best to make him a normal boy, but there was no cure for his condition. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore made special accommodations allowing Remus to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Remus did attend Hogwarts and was sorted into Gryffindor House. And to make sure that he and the rest of his students were safe, Remus would be brought to the Shrieking Shack once a month for his transformations in order to prevent him from attacking other students. Unfortunately, the isolation would cause him to attack himself out of frustration. This and the painful monthly transformations made the villagers of Hogsmeade mistake his screams for violent ghosts. Dumbledore encouraged these rumours to keep Remus a secret. It was because of this that it was dubbed the Shrieking Shack and held a reputation for being the most haunted building in the UK. Remus became best friends with fellow Gryffindors Sirius Black, James Potter and Peter Pettigrew. He kept the fact that he was a werewolf secret from all the students at Hogwarts, including James, Sirius and Peter. He made up stories to explain his monthly disappearances, such as his mother was ill and that he needed to go home to be with her. He was terrified that they would desert him once they found out what he truly was. However, Sirius, James and Peter worked out the truth during their second year at Hogwarts and instantly accepted Remus for who he was. They decided to learn to become animagi so they could keep Remus company during his transformations, as a werewolf was only a danger to humans. By their 5th year, Sirius was able to become a large dog, James a stag, both 2 animals that were large enough to keep the wolfish Remus in check, while Peter became a rat. Fitting. Once a month during the full moon, Sirius, James and Peter would sneak out of the castle under James's invisibility cloak, transform, get into the Whomping Willow, walk down the tunnel to meet up with Remus in the Shrieking Shack. Under their influence, Lupin became tame. While physically he was still a wolf, his mind became less so when he was with them. The 4 of them soon left the Whomping Willow and would walk around the school grounds and Hogsmeade during the nights. Eventually, this group of friends came to call themselves the Marauders, and Remus's friends nicknamed him Moony because of his transformations during the full moon. Remus was a good student, but also a prankster. He and Peter Pettigrew would sometimes join Sirius and James in detention for mischief making. Though they did not get into as much trouble as the other friends, it is unlikely that any other Hogwarts students ever found out as much about Hogwarts and the grounds at Hogsmeade as they did. And they used their knowledge of it to create the Marauders map and signed it with their nicknames. Unfortunately, it somehow ended up being confiscated by Argus Filch, but was eventually rediscovered by Fred and George Weasley in the 1989 to 1990 school year. However, Remus's frequent disappearances riled up an unhealthy curiosity in Severus Snape, a Slytherin student who the Marauders disliked and often bullied. Because of Severus's hatred towards Sirius and James, he disliked Remus and Peter by association, making him all the more suspicious. He often followed Sirius, James, Remus and Peter around in order to see what they were up to, and in an effort to have them expelled. Sometime in their 5th year, Sirius played a malicious prank on Snape by telling him about the Whomping Willow passageway, hoping that he would be terrified or even get seriously hurt by what he found at the other end. James, who hated Snape, was able to stop Snape and save his life in the nick of time, but Snape still uncovered Remus's secret. In his 6th year, Remus was made a prefect. He had trouble exercising discipline over his nearest and dearest friends due to loyalty. He claimed Albus Dumbledore had hoped he would exert control over them as prefects. Sirius later told Harry that Remus wasn't an idiot like his friends, because he was never cruel to Snape. But Remus admitted that he regretted that he had never stepped in to stop the bullying. Shortly after graduating from Hogwarts, Remus joined the Order of the Phoenix along with Sirius, James, Peter and Lily, standing up against Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Remus failed to find employment following his education because of his affliction as a werewolf. However, James used his wealth to financially support him. By the height of the war, Remus's friend Sirius Black had come to distrust him, suspecting that he might be a spy for the other side. When a prophecy was made about a child who would have the power to defeat the Dark Lord, which Dumbledore identified infant Harry Potter as a possible target, Remus was not included in the plan to keep the Potters safe. Though he was aware that they used the Fidelius charm, James and Lily Potter wanted to use Sirius as their secret keeper, but Sirius thought it would be too obvious and thus suggested Peter Pettigrew instead, who would be a nearly unpredictable move, him being known for his measly empty-headedness. Neither Dumbledore or Lupin knew of this switch. At the time of Lily and James's death, Lupin was in the north of the country on Order of the Phoenix business when he discovered what had apparently happened. This was one of the most traumatic events of Remus's life, especially since within the next day he would also be losing his two other best friends. Sirius was imprisoned in Azkaban for supposedly murdering Pettigrew and 12 muggles with one curse. By the early 1990s, Lupin was living in poverty in a tumble-down, semi-derelict cottage in Yorkshire. Albus Dumbledore tracked Lupin down in the summer of 1993 and offered him the post of Defence Against the Dark Arts Professor at Hogwarts, replacing Gilderoy Lockhart. Lupin only accepted Dumbledore's proposal when he explained there would be a limitless supply of Wolfsbane potion, courtesy of Severus Snape, who was now the potions master at the school. Lupin travelled to Hogwarts via the Hogwarts Express. It was here where Remus first directly met Harry Potter. Lupin was apparently sleeping so deeply that he did not notice Hermione's attempt to wake him, but swiftly awoke to deal with the Dementor who was prowling in their cabin in the search for the runaway Sirius. Remus disguised his wolf-shaped Patronus as a vague mist to prevent leaving hints about his afflictions. He then gave everyone within the compartment a piece of chocolate as a mild relief from the Dementor's effects. While doing so, he greeted Harry in a casual and friendly fashion. Remus didn't receive much enthusiasm from most students during his introduction, due to his rather shabby appearance, but Harry and his friends were the few who gave their full approval due to the positive first impressions he gave them. The students were kept in the dark about his affliction, but the staff were made aware that he was a werewolf. Severus Snape, who had switched sides at the end of the war and become a potions professor, provided Remus with Wolfbane potion, allowing him to retain his human mind during his transformations. Remus taught the class a comprehensive and fascinating curriculum of identifying and sidestepping dark creatures, such as Hinkypunks, Redcaps, Grindylows, werewolves and nocturnal beasts. He also taught the class about boggarts and how to repel them using a boggart banishing spell. With great success, Remus had proven himself a skilled teacher, managing to keep the children's interest in the subject, and had shown himself far more competent than his predecessors' vain and useless lessons. It was during their boggart class that Harry realised his greatest fear was fear itself, when his boggart took on the form of a Dementor. After this, Remus gave Harry private lessons in producing a Patronus as a means to repel Dementors. When it became apparent that he was especially vulnerable to them, because according to Lupin, Harry had true horrors in his past that were especially appealing to the Dementors. Initially, being a werewolf, Remus's boggart would take on the form of a full moon. Students who saw this boggart mistook it for a crystal ball, except for Hermione Granger, who cleverly deduced that Remus was a werewolf and kept the discovery to herself. Slytherin students, encouraged by Draco Malfoy, sneered at Remus's shabby clothes and poor appearance. Although he seemed to ignore their comments, his other students held him in extremely high regard and loved the hands-on style of his classes. He was considered by Harry and his friends to have been their only decent Defence Against the Dark Arts teacher. Remus was soon summoned to Snape's office to identify whether a piece of parchment he had caught Harry with to be dark magic. Remus recognised it as the Marauder's map, but tried to pass it off as a product of Zonko's joke shop. At the same moment, Ron burst in to back Harry's claim. After escorting the two boys from Snape's office, Remus told them that he knew what the map was, and that he was more astounded that they did not hand it in, and reprimanded Harry, much to their surprise. He confiscated the map, knowing that it would be too dangerous for Harry to use the secret passages with Sirius on the loose. For his third year's end-of-year test in June, he prepared an unusual exam, an obstacle course out of the grounds, in which the students had to wade across a paddling pool containing Grindylow, cross a series of potholes full of Redcaps, cross a marsh whilst being fed misleading directions by a Hinkypunk, and enter a trunk to battle with a newly procured boggart. Hermione Granger even commented in her 5th year that Lupin's exam was the only occasion where she and Harry took a defence exam from a teacher who actually knew what they were doing. The summer before Remus began his tenure as a defence professor, Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban. Remus, like the rest of the Wizarding world, believed that Sirius had betrayed the Potters to Voldemort and murdered Peter Pettigrew. By the end of the school year, however, Remus knew the truth of what had happened and that Pettigrew was still alive, hiding in his Animagus form. Scabbers, the pet rat of Ron Weasley. He was watching the Marauders map, expecting Harry and his friends to go and see Hagrid before Buckbeak's execution, and was shocked to see Pettigrew coming out of Hagrid's with them. Remus was reunited with his old friend Sirius, and the two resolved to kill Peter Pettigrew for his part in the deaths of James and Lily, and in framing Sirius. They were stopped by Harry, who believed it would be better to hand Peter over to the Ministry of Magic to prove Sirius's innocence, and also didn't think his father would want Remus and Sirius to become killers. However, that night happened to be a full moon, and Remus transformed into a werewolf. Having forgotten to take his Wolfsbane potion, Sirius was forced to turn into his Animagus form to protect Harry, Ron and Hermione from Remus. In the chaos, Pettigrew unfortunately escaped and would later return to the Dark Lord. After the attempted attack on Harry and Hermione, Remus spent the rest of the night deep in the Forbidden Forest. After the danger had passed, Remus resigned from his position when parents learned that he was a werewolf. His sudden resignation was much to the regret of the majority of the Hogwarts students and staff, who had all grown deeply fond of him. Harry in particular begged him earnestly to stay, declaring that he was the best defence against the dark arts teacher that the students have ever had. Remus simply shook his head, handed him the Marauders map, and also returned the invisibility cloak that was left at the Shrieking Shack, and told him that it had been a real pleasure teaching him, and that he was perfectly sure that they would soon meet again. When Lord Voldemort returned, Remus rejoined the Order of the Phoenix. He was a member of the advance guard that escorted Harry from Privet Drive to Grimmauld Place. Lupin lived for some time at Sirius's house, but he was not around very often as he was usually sent on many missions for the Order. On the 18th of June 1996, Remus participated in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries and defeated a number of Death Eaters, including their leader, Lucius Malfoy. He was one of the only 3 combatants to see the end of the battle unscathed, the others being Albus Dumbledore and Harry Potter. Proving Remus's exceptional skill at dueling during this battle, Remus witnessed and was devastated by the death of his friend Sirius, who was pushed through the veil in the Death Chamber by a spell cast from Bellatrix Lestrange. Remus barely managed to prevent Harry from diving in after Sirius. Shortly after the battle and the end of the school year, Remus, along with Moody, Tonks and the Weasleys, confronted the Dursleys at King Cross Station over their treatment of Harry. Some weeks later, Remus began working as a spy for the Order, living among fellow werewolves and trying to convince them to join Dumbledore's side. Now, it said that he volunteered just to keep away from Tonks, as they were both very much in love with each other by this point, and he would not risk his child having lycanthropy. He wasn't able to convince the werewolves due to the fact that they believed they would have a better life under Voldemort's reign. Many were frightened and intimidated by Finria Greyback, and that Remus showed signs of living among humans. Weeks later, on Harry's 16th birthday, Remus visited the Burrow with news of the Dementor attacks and the murder of Igor Karkaroff. During Christmas at the Burrow, Harry told Remus and Arthur Weasley about the conversation he had overheard between Draco Malfoy and Severus Snape. Arthur immediately suggested that Snape was just pretending to help Malfoy, but Lupin severely pointed out that Dumbledore trusted Snape. Although Snape exposed Lupin as a werewolf, forcing him to resign his position at Hogwarts, he also kept him healthy by making him special potions during his monthly transformations. Lupin neither liked nor disliked Snape, but personal feelings have nothing to do with his decision to trust him. Lupin argued strongly against making judgments based on feelings. Even though he had strong reasons to dislike Snape personally, he refused to let this affect his conclusions about the man. The following year, Remus fought bravely again at the Battle of the Astronomy Tower, where he narrowly avoided death by a curse from Thorfinn Roll. Remus was devastated upon hearing about the death of Albus Dumbledore, who had been killed by Severus Snape. However, the aftermath of the battle led him to accept the love of Nymphadora Tonks, who pointed out that Fleur Delacour still loved Bill Weasley in spite of being attacked and scarred by Finria Greyback. The pair attended their former headmaster's funeral together. Shortly after Dumbledore's funeral, and some days before the Order's operation to transport Harry from Privet Drive to safety, Remus and Tonks married in the north of Scotland, with only witnesses from the local tavern. They were forced to marry quietly, given the general prejudice against werewolves. On the 27th of July 1997, Remus participated in the Order's operation to remove Harry Potter from his home before Lord Voldemort could get to him. Remus acted as the protector of George Weasley, who took Polyjuice Potion to become one of the 7 Potters. The party was ambushed by at least 30 cloaked Death Eaters. George was accidentally struck by Severus Snape, who was trying to aim for a Death Eater, but accidentally struck George instead with his Sectra Sempra curse. Remus was unable to pay Snape back in time, it being all he could do to keep George on the broom as he was losing copious amounts of blood. He eventually got the injured George back to the Burrow to be cleaned up, though George permanently lost an ear. Upon arrival, Remus challenged Harry to prove that he was indeed the real Harry. It was later revealed that Snape had sent the spell in an attempt to cut off the hand of the Death Eater, aiming at Remus's back, presumably about to kill him. Remus was very anxious about the late arrival of his wife. Tonks had been aggressively pursued by her murderous, cruel aunt Bellatrix Lestrange. When the party mourned the death of fellow Order member Alistair Moody, they discussed their betrayal. Harry voiced his opinion that he trusted all of them with his life. Remus urged caution, seeing as Harry's father was killed because he put his trust in the wrong friend. In the next days, Remus seemed to become withdrawn and sullen. He attended Harry's birthday party, but left when Rufus Scrimgeour arrived. Remus and Tonks later both attended the wedding of Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour, and bravely defended the Burrow when it came under attack as Voldemort took over the Ministry. Remus suffered great mental anguish as the war escalated. When he learned that his wife was pregnant, he even tore out a clump of his own hair in anxiety over the possibility that his child would be born as a werewolf. He visited Harry, Ron and Hermione while they were hiding out in Grimmauld Place and offered to help them with their search for Voldemort's Horcruxes. However, Harry denounced him, calling him a coward for even considering leaving his wife alone while pregnant. Remus got so mad that he flung Harry against a wall with his wand and left greatly agitated. Harry and his friends next heard of Remus on Potter Watch under the code name Romulus. Remus made Harry realise that they were still good friends, with his putting forth the opinion that Harry's instincts were good and they were usually right. Remus eventually came to his senses and reunited with Tonks in time to see the birth of his son. They named him Edward Remus Teddy Lupin, after Tonks' father who had recently been murdered by Death Eaters. And Remus asked Harry to be Teddy's godfather. Remus was one of the many Order members who answered Neville Longbottom's call on May 1st, 1998, shortly before the start of the Battle of Hogwarts. Harry, Ron and Hermione returned to Hogwarts, and Lord Voldemort gathered his army to attack the school in order to capture Harry. Lupin organised and led groups to fight Death Eaters on the school grounds, along with Kingsley Shacklebolt and Arthur Weasley. Tonks initially agreed not to participate in the Battle of Hogwarts, instead staying behind with their infant son, but was ultimately unable to bear leaving her husband to face such a danger without her. She left Teddy with her mother and raced to Hogwarts, where she was informed that Remus was last seen dueling Death Eater Antonin Dolohov. Dolohov killed Remus, who was no longer in prime fighting condition due to months of protective and concealment charms in order to keep his wife and son safe from possible attacks. He was killed during the first half of the battle, along with many others, including Tonks, his wife, who was killed by Aunt Bellatrix Lestrange. Lupin's death was avenged by Phileas Flitwick, who defeated or possibly killed Dolohov. During the brief pause in the battle, Remus and Tonks' bodies were laid out beside each other in the Great Hall. The nature of Remus's death was not revealed, but his body was described as peaceful looking, implying that he was struck either with a killing curse or Dolohov's own curse. Both were known to leave no visible marks on the outer of the body. However, Remus still had an important part to play in the war. When Harry proceeded to the Death Eater camp to be struck down by Lord Voldemort, he first activated the Resurrection Stone, bringing back the spirits of his parents, Sirius and Remus. Remus expressed that he hoped that Harry would care for his son, lamenting that he would never know him, but also found comfort in the fact that his son would know and understand why he died. He was trying to make a world in which his son could live a happier life. Remus Lupin was posthumously awarded the Order of Merlin First Class, the first werewolf ever to have been awarded this honour. The example of his life and death played an important role in lifting the stigma on werewolves among the Wizarding Society. And that was the life of Remus Lupin. Like I said at the beginning, Remus is one of my favourite characters. I think he had such a tragic life. He just never seemed to catch a full break. I think it's probably his best times were his school days. But he seemed to have a lot of unhappiness in the start of his life, obviously being attacked by a werewolf and obviously living with the anxiety that comes from being a werewolf. Plus then, as he sort of reached adulthood, realising that he probably wouldn't be able to get a normal job like every other person in the wizarding world because of his afflictions, and then ultimately being killed along with his wife. I think it's just so tragic, and I absolutely adore Remus Lupin. I think he's such a great character. He was so well written. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, that was the life story of Remus Lupin. These videos, you guys, are so hard to film. You have no idea. I tend to talk at like 1,000 miles per hour. I tend to stumble over my words a lot. So filming and editing these videos is so hard. But I love how they come out in the end. Obviously, it takes a little bit of work on my end to actually get them out to make them look even half decent. So I really hope that you enjoy them. If you do, please give this video a massive thumbs up for me. Maybe pop me a comment in the comments down below so that I know that you are enjoying them and I will continue to do more. I'm probably intending on doing another of the Marauders in the next video. I'm thinking they have real amazing backstories and real sort of intriguing backstories. So I'm hoping to do another one of the Marauders. But like I said, definitely let me know if you are enjoying these videos because they do take an awful lot of effort for me to film. So if you are enjoying them, then I'll keep doing them. It's great. It's definitely worth it. If you're not enjoying them as much, then please say you enjoy them. But yeah, definitely give this video a massive thumbs up for me so that I know that you're enjoying it. And don't forget, if you haven't done already, to please hit the subscribe button to become part of my little magical community, and turn the notification bells on as well to be notified every time I upload a video. And I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye, you guys.